High Arbiter N sat upon her throne of black crystal and watched the parade of conquered species bow before her. The throne room of the orbital palace stretched for half a mile in every direction. Pillars of living light rose toward a ceiling that showed the stars themselves. This was power. This was the dominion. 17 different species knelt on the polished floor. Some had scales, some had fur, some had neither. All of them trembled. They brought tribute, rare metals, precious gems, slaves, and technology stripped from their own worlds. N watched them with eyes that had seen 10,000 such ceremonies. She felt nothing but boredom. They had ruled the Orion Spur for 11,000 years. They had conquered every species they encountered. They had crushed every rebellion. They had burned every world that refused to kneel. Victory had become so common that it lost all meaning. War itself had become a forgotten art, studied only by strange academics with too much time. N dismissed the tribute bearers with a wave of her clawed hand. They away like insects fleeing a flame. She turned to her chief advisor, a older named and who had served her family for 300 years. "Another day," she said, "another meaningless display." "Such is the burden of eternal supremacy, High Arbiter," N replied. Before she could respond, a young officer rushed into the throne room. His scales were pale with excitement. He dropped to his knees and pressed his forehead to the floor. "Speak," N commanded. "High Arbiter, the survey vessel Distant Eye has discovered something, a new species, in an uncharted system around a yellow star." N felt a small flicker of interest. New species were rare these days. The Dominion had mapped most of the galaxy. "Show me." The officer activated a holographic display. A blue and green world appeared, spinning slowly in the light. It was beautiful in a primitive way. Data scrolled alongside the image. "They call themselves humans," the officer explained. "They have only recently achieved interplanetary travel within their own system. They have colonized their moon and one neighboring planet. Their technology is crude, chemical rockets, basic fusion power, nothing that could threaten even our smallest patrol craft." "And yet you interrupt my court for this?" N asked coldly. "There is more, High Arbiter. Their radio signals, they are unusual." The officer played a selection of intercepted transmissions. Music filled the throne room, strange, emotional music with instruments they had never heard. Then came voices arguing about politics, declarations of love between individuals who would never meet, advertisements for products, news reports about conflicts, comedy programs, tragedy, everything that a civilization could produce, all of it broadcast into the void without any attempt at secrecy. "They are loud and observed. They broadcast everything." "They are fools," N decided. "What else do we know?" The officer hesitated. "Their world is divided, High Arbiter. They have nearly 200 separate governing bodies. Nation-states, they call them. They compete with each other constantly. They fight wars among themselves." This drew laughter from the assembled courtiers. A species that fought itself. How delightfully primitive, how wonderfully weak. They had unified their world before they ever reached for the stars. These humans were barely more than animals. "They will be easy to conquer," one of the courtiers said. "A divided species cannot resist." "They will fight each other for the privilege of surrendering to us," another added. N silenced them with a look. She studied the blue world for a long moment. Something about these humans interested her, not their technology, which was laughable, not their divisions, which were pathetic. Something else, something in those radio signals. "Send a subjugation fleet," she commanded. "Standard composition. 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers. Bring them into the Dominion or burn their world. I care not which." The officer bowed. "Who shall command, High Arbiter?" "Fleet Lord, he has grown restless. This will give him something to do." Fleet Lord was one of the finest military commanders in the Dominion. He had crushed 3 rebellions and conquered 2 species during his career. Sending him against these primitive humans was like sending a master hunter to catch a sleeping rabbit. It was almost insulting, but would not complain. Any assignment was better than waiting in orbit with nothing to kill. The court resumed its normal business. More tribute, more bowing, more tedious displays of absolute power. N found her thoughts drifting back to the blue world and its strange, loud inhabitants. In a small office deep within the palace, intelligence officer reviewed the human transmissions with growing unease. She was young for her position, barely 200 years old, but she had a gift for patterns, for seeing what others missed. The humans were fascinating. Their transmissions contained everything: scientific papers, historical documents, entertainment, philosophy, religion, art. They held nothing back. They poured their entire civilization into the void for anyone to hear. And within that flood of information, I found something that made her scales turn cold. War records. Not just a few conflicts, thousands of them, tens of thousands. The humans had been fighting each other since before they could write. They had developed every weapon imaginable: swords and spears, guns and bombs, biological agents and nuclear fire. They had burned their own cities. They had killed millions of their own kind. They had invented entirely new ways to destroy each other, tested them, and then invented more. Every war was recorded in precise detail: strategies and tactics, victories and defeats, heroes and villains. The humans remembered everything. They taught their children about ancient battles fought with bronze weapons. They studied campaigns from centuries past. They analyzed every conflict, learned from every mistake, and prepared for the next war. I pulled up the records of species the Dominion had conquered. The Or had fought one war in their history before surrendering. They had never developed weapons beyond hunting tools. They had been so peaceful that they welcomed the Dominion ships as friends. None of them had been prepared for conquest. But the humans had been preparing for war since before they built their first cities. They had never stopped preparing. Their entire civilization was built on conflict. Every generation trained to fight. Every nation maintained armies. Every child learned the stories of battles past. They have been practicing, I whispered to herself. She brought her findings to N. The old advisor listened patiently, then dismissed her concerns with a gentle smile. Young one, you mistake quantity for quality. Yes, the humans fight each other, but they fight with primitive weapons against primitive enemies. They have never faced a Dominion dreadnought. They have never seen orbital bombardment. Their practice, as you call it, means nothing against our technology. But their determination. Determination dies quickly under plasma fire. Every species resists at first. Every species learns to kneel. These humans will be no different. I left the advisor's office unconvinced, but she was young and was old and wise. Perhaps she was wrong. Perhaps the humans would kneel like all the others. In the shipyards of the Dominion, Fleet Lord received his orders. He read them twice, then threw the data tablet against the wall. Humans, he snarled. They send me to conquer humans, primitives who cannot even leave their own system. His second-in-command, a veteran named S, picked up the broken tablet. Perhaps the High Arbiter means to insult you, my lord. Perhaps she means to bore me to death. Stared out the viewport at his fleet. 12 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a civilization. 40 cruisers, armed with weapons these humans could not comprehend. This will be over in days, hours perhaps. The humans will see our fleet and surrender. And if they do not, then we burn them and return home before the next tribute ceremony. Turned from the viewport. Signal the fleet. We depart immediately. I want this finished quickly. The subjugation fleet left port the next morning. 52 vessels of war, carrying enough firepower to crack a continent, all aimed at a small blue world that had never known they existed. As the fleet entered faster than light travel, I watched from her office window. She could not shake the feeling that something was wrong, that the Dominion was making a terrible mistake. In her mind, she kept hearing a phrase from one of the human transmissions, a warning from a long-dead human general, spoken to enemies who had underestimated his people. "We have not yet begun to fight." Admiral stood in the command center of the UTC Defiance and watched the alien fleet emerge from faster-than-light travel. The sensors showed 52 vessels, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They appeared beyond Saturn's orbit like ghosts stepping out of empty space. Beautiful, terrifying, expected. "Confirmed contact," her tactical officer reported. 12 capital ships, 40 support vessels. Energy signatures match the profiles from the crashed probe. "Time to Saturn Station." 6 hours at their current speed. Nodded slowly. Humanity had known this day would come. For 49 years since the discovery of the alien probe in the asteroid belt, they had prepared. They had reverse-engineered the technology. They had built ships in secret. They had trained crews for a war against an enemy they had never met. Now the enemy had arrived. "Open a channel," ordered. "Let us hear what they have to say." The main screen flickered. A face appeared, reptilian with golden scales and eyes like black pools. Fleet Lord looked upon his first human with contempt. He saw a small creature with soft skin and weak limbs. He saw prey. "I am Fleet Lord of the Dominion," the alien announced. "Your species has been selected for integration into the Dominion. You will surrender all military assets immediately. Your governments will dissolve. Your people will serve. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of You have one planetary rotation to comply." The transmission ended. Had not waited for a response. In his experience, primitive species needed time to argue among themselves before accepting the inevitable. In the command center of the Defiance, silence followed the ultimatum. Officers looked to their admiral. Some were afraid. Most were not. They had trained for this. They had waited for this. Smiled. "Open a channel to the alien flagship," she said. The communications officer hesitated. "Admiral, should we not contact Earth Command first? The Coalition Assembly will want to." "Open the channel." The channel opened. His face appeared again, surprised to receive a response so quickly. He had expected weeping, begging, not a small human woman staring at him with eyes like cold steel. "You should have brought more ships," said. She cut the transmission. Stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then he laughed. His officers laughed with him. The human was brave, they agreed, stupid but brave. She would learn. They always learned. "Advance the fleet," commanded. "Standard subjugation formation. If they resist, destroy their outer colonies first. Let them see what defiance costs." The fleet moved inward. They passed the orbit of Neptune without incident. They approached Uranus. Still nothing. The humans seemed to have no ships at all. Perhaps they had hidden them behind there. Perhaps they had none worth mentioning. "Sensors detect no military vessels," the tactical officer reported. "Only civilian stations, mining platforms, nothing that could threaten us." "As expected," said, "continue advance." They reached Saturn's orbit. The great ringed planet hung in the void like a jewel. Admired it briefly. It would make a fine mining platform once the humans were subjugated. "My lord," the sensor officer said suddenly, "I am detecting anomalies." "What kind of anomalies?" "In the rings and around the moons, energy signatures that were not there before." Before could respond, the universe turned to fire. 300 ships emerged from Saturn's rings. They had been hiding among the ice and rock, running silent, waiting. Human frigates, sleek and fast, armed with weapons they had never seen. They fired as they emerged. Rounds crossed the void at impossible speeds. Each projectile was a simple piece of tungsten but accelerated to a fraction of. They punched through shields like paper. They tore through armor like it was not there. They killed ships with single shots. "Return fire," screamed. "All ships return fire." The fleet responded with plasma cannons and particle beams. They were powerful weapons, devastating against any technology the Dominion had ever encountered. They hit human ships and did damage, but the humans were fast. They moved through the battle like dancers, never staying in one place, never presenting easy targets. And they were not alone. From the moons of Saturn, more weapons spoke. Hidden platforms, buried in ice for decades, emerged and fired. Missiles by the thousands, rounds by the tens of thousands. A storm of metal and fire that consumed ships like a hungry beast. The dreadnought Eternal Victory was the first to die. A weapon that did not recognize struck its reactor core. The ship simply ceased to exist, replaced by an expanding cloud of plasma and debris. "What was that?" demanded. "What weapon was that?" "Unknown, my lord. The projectile ignored our shields completely. Some kind of kinetic penetrator, moving at 30%. Impossible. No species has that technology, not even." The Dreadnought Supreme might exploded off his starboard bow. Then the divine wrath. Then the conquered horizon. One by one, his greatest ships died to weapons that should not exist. Watched his fleet burn. In 11 minutes, he lost 8 dreadnoughts, 8 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy, destroyed by creatures who had not even left their own system when he was born. It was impossible. It was happening. "My lord, we must retreat," S urged. "We cannot win this battle. We are the Dominion. We do not retreat from primitives." "My lord, please, if we stay, we die, all of us. And then who will warn the—" That thought cut through's pride. The had to know. The Dominion had to be warned. These humans were not primitives. They were something far worse. "Signal retreat," said. The words tasted like poison. "All ships fall back to FTL distance. We return to Dominion space." The surviving ships ran. They fled through a storm of fire, taking more losses with every passing minute. Of the 52 ships that had arrived, only 12 escaped into faster-than-light travel. 4 cruisers reached the jump point together. The rest were dead. Was not among the survivors. His flagship, the Pride of Conquest, took a round through its command deck. The last thing Fleet Lord saw was the blue glow of human engines as a frigate closed for the killing blow. His last thought was a simple one. How? How had they known? How had they prepared? In the debris field that had once been a fleet, Admiral surveyed the destruction. They had lost ships. Good ships with good crews. 47 human vessels destroyed. Thousands of lives ended. The first casualties of a war that was only beginning. "Admiral," her tactical officer said, "4 enemy cruisers have escaped to FTL. Should we pursue?" "No, let them go." "Ma'am." "Let them go home. Let them tell their masters what happened here." Watched the last traces of FTL energy fade from her sensors. "Let them know that we are not slaves. Let them know that we are not afraid. Let them know that we are coming for them." She turned to face her bridge crew, men and women from every nation on Earth, soldiers who had trained their whole lives for this day. "Signal all commands," she said. "The battle of Saturn's rings is over. Humanity is victorious, but this war has just begun. The Dominion will send more ships, larger fleets, everything they have, and we will be ready." The crew cheered. It was a strange sound, joy mixed with grief, triumph mixed with the knowledge of battles yet to come. They had won the first battle, but they all knew the truth. They had ruled the stars for 11,000 years. They would not accept defeat. They would come back. And when they did, humanity would be waiting. On Earth, news of the victory spread across every screen and speaker. People gathered in the streets. They laughed and cried and held each other. For the first time in history, humanity had faced an alien threat and won. They were not alone in the universe, but they were not helpless either. In the ruins of Saturn Station, rescue ships searched for survivors. They found some. Not many. The station had taken heavy fire in the early minutes of the battle before the human fleet had fully engaged. 3,000 people had lived there. Perhaps 200 survived. Among the debris, a search team found something else. A piece of hull plating, torn from one of the destroyed dreadnoughts. Someone had written on it with a welding torch. The message was simple. 4 words that would become humanity's motto in the war to come. We hold the line. The first battle was over. The war for the stars had begun, and for the first time in 11,000 years the Dominion knew fear. High Arbiter N received the survivors in her throne room. 4 cruisers, 4 ships out of 52. The commanders stood before her with their heads bowed, their scales pale with shame. They spoke of impossible weapons, ships that moved too fast, tactics that made no sense, a battle lost in minutes. N listened in silence. When they finished, she did not speak for a long time. The throne room was quiet. Even the eternal light pillars seemed dimmer. "Fleet Lord is dead," she finally asked. "Yes, High Arbiter. His ship was destroyed in the final assault." "And the human losses?" "Unknown, perhaps 40 or 50 vessels, a fraction of their force." "How many ships did they have?" "At least 300, High Arbiter, perhaps more. They were hidden. We did not detect them until they attacked." N rose from her throne. She walked down the steps slowly, her claws clicking on the crystal floor. The surviving commanders flinched as she approached. They expected punishment. They expected death. "You did right to flee," she said instead. "You brought warning. That is worth more than your lives." She turned to N. The old advisor looked older now, his scales gray with worry. "Summon the War Council," N commanded. "For the first time in 4,000 years, the Dominion goes to war." The War Council met in the deep chambers beneath the palace, ancient rooms that had not been used since the last great rebellion, 10 generations past. Admirals and generals gathered around a table of black stone. Maps of the galaxy glowed in the air above them. "How did this happen?" demanded Admiral, the oldest military commander in the Dominion. "How did primitives defeat our fleet?" Intelligence officer stepped forward. She had been summoned from her small office, elevated suddenly to the center of power. Her earlier warnings had been ignored. Now everyone wanted to hear what she had to say. "They were not primitives," explained. "They allowed us to believe they were. 50 years ago, one of our probes crashed on their world. They found it, they studied it, they learned." "Learned what?" "Our technology is beyond their comprehension." "No longer." Activated a display showing human ships. "They reverse-engineered our faster-than-light drive. They developed technology that exceeds our own. They built a fleet in secret while broadcasting messages of division and weakness." "They tricked us," and said quietly. "They made us think they were harmless." "They did more than trick us." Changed the display to show human history. Wars stretched back through. They prepared. Their entire species has been preparing for war since before they discovered fire. Every generation fights. Every generation learns. They passed down knowledge of combat for 10,000 years. Admiral studied the display with growing unease. "But they fought each other, with primitive weapons. How does that prepare them for us?" "Because the weapons change, but war does not." Highlighted battle after battle. Strategy, tactics, the will to fight against impossible odds. These things they have mastered. They study their own defeats more than their victories. They learn from every loss. They never give up. The War Council debated for 3 days. Some wanted to negotiate. The humans had proven themselves dangerous. Perhaps they could be brought into the Dominion as partners rather than slaves. Others wanted to retreat, to fortify the borders and let the humans have their small corner of the galaxy. High Arbiter N listened to all arguments. Then she made her decision. "We will destroy them," she said. "Completely, utterly. We will burn their colonies, and there we will kill every human in the galaxy. They will not be conquered. They will not be enslaved. They will be erased." High Arbiter, one council member protested. Such action has not been taken in 8,000 years. The cost. The cost of letting them live is greater. N's eyes were hard as black stone. You saw what 300 of their ships did to our fleet. What happens when they build 3,000? What happens when they come for us? She turned to Admiral. Mobilize the Grand Armada, every ship we have, 6,000 vessels, enough firepower to crack a world. We end this quickly before they grow stronger. The Admiral bowed. It will take 3 months to gather such a force, High Arbiter. Then you have 3 months, not a day more. While the Dominion prepared for war, Admiral addressed the United Terran Coalition Assembly. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth and every colony in the solar system. They had seen the victory at Saturn. Now they wanted to know what came next. The battle we won was just the first blow, explained. The enemy will return. They will bring everything they have. We estimate their full military strength at 6,000 warships or more. Murmurs of fear rippled through the assembly. However, continued, we are not as weak as they believe. She activated a holographic display. For 50 years we have prepared in secret. We built ships in the asteroid belt, hidden from view. We developed weapons that surpass anything the Dominion has faced. We trained crews for a war we knew was coming. The display showed the human fleet, not 300 ships, 3,000. We do not have to defend, said. We can attack. We can take the war to them, strike their supply lines, destroy their shipyards. We can show the galaxy that the Dominion can be beaten. And the species they have conquered, asked the Chinese representative. 17 races enslaved for thousands of years. What of them? We free them. His voice was firm. We do not conquer, we do not enslave. That is what makes us different. That is what makes us better. The assembly voted that night. War was declared. Not a war of conquest, but a war of liberation. Humanity would fight not just for itself, but for every species crushed under the Dominion's heel. Across Earth and the colonies, recruitment centers filled with volunteers, young and old, rich and poor, from every nation and background. They came not because they were forced, but because they believed. In Tokyo, a news crew interviewed an elderly woman waiting in line to enlist. Her name was. She was 87 years old. Why are you here? The reporter asked. Surely you are too old to fight. I am too old to fight, agreed. But not too old to serve. My grandmother survived Hiroshima. She taught me what humans can endure. She taught me that we do not surrender. We suffer, we grieve, we bury our dead, and then we rise. What will you do? Whatever they need, cook food, clean ships, hold the hands of wounded soldiers, whatever helps us win. The reporter shared the interview across every network. Within hours, millions had seen it. Became a symbol of what humanity was fighting for, not conquest but survival, not power but freedom. In the asteroid belt, the true human fleet awakened. Ships that had been built in secret, crewed in secret, armed in secret. 3,000 vessels emerged from hidden docks carved into the rocks, dreadnoughts and carriers, cruisers and frigates, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. Admiral stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the UTC Humanity's Hope. It was twice the size of the Defiance, armed with weapons that the Dominion had never imagined. Around her, 3,000 ships waited for orders. The enemy is gathering their forces, she told her fleet commanders via hologram. We have 3 months before they march. We will not waste that time. We will strike first. We will hit their supply depots, their shipyards, their forward bases. We will make them afraid. And then, asked Commodore James, a veteran of the Saturn battle. And then we keep hitting them until they break. The human fleet divided into strike groups. Each group had its targets. Each captain had their orders. The war would not be won in a single battle. It would be won through 1,000 cuts, 1,000,000 small victories, an endless demonstration that humanity would never stop fighting. As the first strike groups departed for Dominion space, watched them go. She thought of the old woman who could not fight but would not stand aside. She thought of her own grandmother who had told her stories of wars past, of sacrifices made so that future generations could live free. "We did not ask for this war," said to the stars, "but we will finish it." The war for the galaxy had begun, and humanity was done waiting. The war spread across the stars like fire through dry grass. Human strike groups appeared without warning, struck hard, and vanished before the Dominion could respond. Supply depots burned. Shipyards crumbled. They had never fought a defensive war. They did not know how. Admiral led the main assault herself. Her fleet cut a path through Dominion space, destroying military targets and avoiding civilian worlds. They were not conquerors. They were liberators. And everywhere they went, they left a message. The Dominion can be beaten. The first liberation came at Or, a world that had been enslaved for 6,000 years. The Or were a gentle species, tall and thin with 4 arms and skin like blue silk. They had been farmers before the Dominion came. Now they were slaves, working in mines that stripped their own world of resources. A Dominion garrison of 20 ships guarded the planet, brought 60. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, every Dominion ship was destroyed or fleeing. Human marines landed on the surface, expecting resistance. Instead, they found or emerging from their hiding places, staring at the sky with wonder. A human sergeant named Maria Santos was the first to make contact. Our elder approached her, trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. "Are you here to replace our masters?" the elder asked through a translator device. "No," Santos replied. "We are here to free you. You have no masters anymore." The elder fell to his knees and wept. He had been born a slave. His parents had been born slaves. For 50 generations, his people had known nothing but chains. And now, in a single day, those chains were broken. Word of or spread across the galaxy. Other enslaved species heard the story. A species called humans had come from nowhere and challenged the Dominion. They fought not to conquer, but to free. They asked for nothing in return. Hope, long dead, began to stir. The Dominion responded with fury. High Arbiter N accelerated the gathering of the Grand Armada. She could not wait 3 months. The humans were spreading chaos through her empire. Every day brought new reports of attacks, of liberated worlds, of slaves rising against their masters. 2 months after the Battle of Saturn, the Grand Armada was ready. 6,000 ships, including 400 dreadnoughts, the largest fleet in Dominion history. Admiral commanded from the flagship Absolute Dominion, a vessel so large it had its own gravity. "Find the human fleet," N ordered via hologram. "Destroy them, end this rebellion." "Bode, it will be done, High Arbiter. They cannot hide forever." The Grand Armada swept through space like a tide of destruction. They recaptured 3 liberated worlds. They hunted human strike groups. They chased Admiral's fleet across a dozen systems. The humans ran, and the Dominion followed. Until the humans stopped running. The Crimson Nebula was a cloud of red gas and dying stars, 100 light-years across. Navigation was difficult. Sensors were unreliable. It was the perfect place for an ambush or a trap. Led her fleet into the nebula. The Grand Armada followed. "We have them," Admiral announced. 800 human ships against our 6,000. The mathematics are clear. "Do not underestimate them," warned Captain second in command. "They have surprised us before." "There are no surprises here, only numbers, and numbers do not lie." The fleets met in the heart of the nebula. 6,000 Dominion ships formed a wall of steel and fire. 800 human ships faced them, seemingly hopeless, seemingly doomed. Opened a channel to her fleet. "Today, we face the greatest armada the Dominion has ever assembled. They outnumber us nearly 8 to 1. They believe they have won already. They believe we are beaten. She paused, letting her words sink in. They are wrong. We are humans. We do not surrender. We do not break. We fight until our last breath, and then we fight some more. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. Today, we make them remember. The battle began. Human ships dove into the Dominion formation like wolves among sheep. They did not fight in lines like the expected. They swirled and danced, striking from every angle, never stopping, never slowing. The nebula disrupted Dominion sensors. Human ships appeared from the red mist, fired, and vanished again. For every human ship destroyed, they killed 10 Dominion vessels. But 10 to 1 was not enough, not against 6,000. The battle raged for hours. Human ships fell. Brave crews died. The Dominion lost hundreds of ships, then 1,000, but still they had thousands more. The mathematics were clear, just as had said. Humanity was losing. Admiral Commodore's voice crackled over the comm. My group is in position. We can hold the while you withdraw. James. There is no other way. The fleet must survive. Someone has to hold the line. Closed her eyes. She had known this moment would come. She had hoped it would not be him. How long can you hold? Long enough. Get the fleet out. Finish this war. That is all I ask. Numbered 40 ships. They positioned themselves at the nebula's only safe exit point. That led to human-controlled space. The Grand Armada would have to go through them to catch the retreating fleet. All ships fall back to the ordered. Commodore will cover our withdrawal. The human fleet ran. Behind them, 40 ships faced 3,000 Dominion vessels. The mathematics were beyond hopeless. They were impossible. Did not care about mathematics. This is Commodore James to all ships under my command. We hold this gate. We hold it until the last ship passes through. We hold it until we have nothing left to give. And then we hold it some more. The Dominion fleet crashed against his position like a wave against a rock. Ships exploded. Crews died. But for every minute they held, more of the main fleet escaped. His flagship, the UTC Defiant, took hit after hit. Fire spread through the corridors. Systems failed. The crew fought on. Commodore, we have lost engine power, his first officer reported. We cannot maneuver. Then we do not need to maneuver. We just need to shoot. The Defiant fired until its weapons melted. It rammed a Dominion cruiser when the guns failed. When the collision did not destroy both ships, ordered the reactor overloaded. His final transmission reached the retreating fleet. Tell my daughter I held the line. The explosion took out 3 Dominion dreadnoughts. When the light faded, was gone, 40 ships destroyed to the last, but they had bought enough time. The main human fleet escaped through the 600 ships survived. And the Dominion had lost 3,000. Admiral surveyed the wreckage with something he had never felt before, fear. The humans had been outnumbered 8 to 1. They had lost the battle, but they had made the Dominion bleed for every inch. 3,000 ships, half his armada, gone. Continue pursuit, he ordered, but his voice shook. Captain looked at the debris field that had once been 40 ships against 3,000. They had known they would die. They had fought anyway. What are these humans? Whispered. No one answered, but everyone was thinking the same thing. The Dominion had ruled through fear for 11,000 years. Now, for the first time, the Dominion itself was afraid. News of the Battle of the Crimson Nebula spread across the galaxy. The humans had lost, but they had made the Dominion pay a price that could not be ignored. 3,000 ships destroyed, half the Grand Armada broken against 800 human vessels. On liberated worlds, enslaved species began to rise. They had seen what humans could do. They had seen that the Dominion could bleed. If these strange, soft-skinned beings from a small blue world could fight like that, then perhaps freedom was possible after all. Admiral received messages from 17 species. They wanted to join the war. They wanted to fight alongside humanity. They wanted to be free. She sent one message in return. "We welcome you. Together we will finish this. Together we will be free." The war was not over. The Dominion still had thousands of ships, but now humanity was not alone. Now they had allies. Now they had an army of the oppressed, united against their oppressors. And in her private quarters, Admiral wept for James, her friend, her comrade, the man who had held the line so that others could live. She would not let his sacrifice be wasted. She would finish this war, whatever it cost. The Free People's Alliance assembled in the Or system, now the heart of the rebellion against the Dominion. 17 species had answered humanity's call. Ships of every shape and size gathered around the blue world that had been the first to taste freedom. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Humanity's Hope and watched the Allied fleet form up, or cruisers with their curved hulls, carriers that looked like floating gardens, destroyers built for speed, and everywhere human ships, the backbone of the Alliance. 3,000 vessels in total, not enough to match the remaining Dominion forces, but enough to strike at the heart. Captain stood beside. She was 28 years old, tall and strong, with her father's eyes and her father's courage. She had received command of the UTC Defiant II, named for the ship her father had sacrificed at the Crimson Nebula. "The scouts have returned," reported. "The Dominion has recalled all forces to there. They are preparing a final defense." "How many ships?" 2,500, everything they have left. Nodded slowly. The Dominion had lost half their Grand Armada at the Crimson Nebula. They had lost hundreds more defending worlds that fell anyway. Now they retreated to there, hopping to make a final stand. "There is something else," added. "Intelligence reports a weapon, something called the Star's End, a device capable of igniting a star. They would destroy a sun. They would destroy Earth's sun. If we attack there, they will fire the weapon." Silence fell across the bridge. Everyone understood what that meant. Earth destroyed. 8 billion people dead. Everything humanity had built, gone in a flash of nuclear fire. Walked to the viewport and stared at the stars. She thought of her grandmother who had told her stories of old Earth. She thought of the cities, the forests, the oceans. She thought of children who had never known war, playing in parks beneath a yellow sun. "Can we disable the weapon?" she asked. "Perhaps. An infiltration team could reach the orbital palace where it is controlled, but they would have to get through the entire Dominion defense fleet first." "Then that is what we will do." The Allied fleet departed for Dominion space. For 3 weeks they traveled through the void, preparing for the battle that would decide everything. Human ships flew alongside vessels from 17 different species, different shapes, different technologies, different histories, but all united by one thing, the desire to be free. They emerged from faster-than-light travel in the heart of Dominion territory. The hung before them, a world of silver cities and ancient monuments. Around it, 2,500 Dominion ships waited in formation. And above the planet, a massive orbital palace dominated the sky, the seat of the High Arbiter, the center of power for 11,000 years, and somewhere inside, the Star's End waited to burn Earth to ashes. High Arbiter N watched the Allied fleet arrive. She had seen the reports. She knew how many ships they had. She knew they could not win, not against her remaining fleet, not with the Star's End ready to fire. She opened a communication channel. "Admiral, you have fought well. Your species has proven itself worthy of respect, but this war is over. Withdraw now and I will spare your. Continue your attack and I will ignite your sun. 8 billion of your people will die. The choice is yours." His face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, she looked sad, but her eyes were hard as stone. "You think I do not know what you plan. You think I did not prepare for this moment," shook her head slowly. "We did not come this far to kneel. We did not sacrifice so much to surrender. Your weapon will not fire. Your fleet will fall. And your empire will end." You cannot stop the star's end. It is beyond your reach. We will see. Cut the transmission. The battle began. 3,000 Allied ships crashed against 2,500 Dominion defenders. The space around the turned to fire and chaos. Ships died by the hundreds on both sides. The Dominion fought with desperate fury, knowing this was their last stand. The Allies fought with the determination of people who had nothing left to lose. While the fleets clashed, a single transport ship slipped through the chaos. It carried a special team, soldiers from 6 different species, led by Captain. Their mission: reach the orbital palace and disable the star's end before it could fire. The transport dodged through the battle, taking fire, losing shields but never stopping. They reached the palace and crashed through a docking bay, sliding across the deck in a shower of sparks. Was first out of the wreck. Around her, human soldiers and alien warriors followed, or with plasma rifles, with blade arms, with their speed and claws. Together, they fought through the palace corridors, cutting down every guard who stood in their way. In the throne room, En watched the battle unfold with growing despair. Her fleet was losing. The Allies were breaking through. Everything she had built, everything her ancestors had built for 11,000 years, was crumbling. "High Arbiter," her advisor said, "the infiltrators are approaching. You must activate the star's end now." En reached for the control. One touch and Earth would die. One touch and humanity would pay for this rebellion with everything they had. Her claw hovered over the button. The door exploded inward. Strode through the smoke, rifle raised. Behind her, her team spread out, weapons trained on the throne. "Step away from the control," commanded. En did not move. "If I press this button, your world burns. And if you press that button, we kill you, and then we destroy your world anyway." Walked closer, her eyes never leaving the High Arbiter. "You lose either way. The only question is whether you take 8 billion innocent people with you. You would not dare destroy my world. You humans claim to be different. You claim to be liberators, not conquerors." "We are different," lowered her rifle. "Which is why I am offering you a choice. Surrender, stand trial for your crimes, help rebuild what the Dominion destroyed, or die here alone with nothing to show for 11,000 years of cruelty." En looked at the human woman, so small, so fragile, and yet she had fought her way through an entire palace to stand here, facing the ruler of 1,000 worlds. "How," En whispered, "how did you do this? How did a species so young, so divided, so weak defeat us?" Smiled. It was her father's smile, sad and proud at the same time. "Because you ruled through fear, and fear makes people hesitate, it makes them doubt, it makes them weak." She stepped closer until she could see her own reflection in the High Arbiter's black eyes. "We fight through love, love for our homes, love for our families, love for our future, and love does not hesitate, love does not doubt, love makes us unstoppable." Outside, the battle was ending. The Dominion fleet broke apart, ships surrendering one by one. The Allies had won. The war was over. En looked at the star's end control. One touch and she could still destroy Earth. One touch and she could have revenge even in defeat. But what would that accomplish? More death, more hatred, more war. The Dominion had ruled through fear for 11,000 years, and all it had earned them was enemies. Slowly she her claw. "I surrender," she said. The Dominion fell, not with fire and death, but with a single act of surrender. The oldest empire in the galaxy, ended by creatures who had been walking between stars for less than a century. In the weeks that followed, the Free People's Alliance became something more. Not just a military alliance, but a true union of species. A galactic democracy where every voice mattered, where every life had value. Humans did not rule it. They served alongside their allies, building something new. En stood trial for crimes against sentient beings. She was found guilty and sentenced not to death, but to service. She would spend the rest of her life helping rebuild the worlds the Dominion had destroyed. Some called it mercy, others called it justice. Perhaps it was both. 100 years later, a child named sat in a schoolroom on the. Her teacher was human, a woman named Santos, descendant of the first soldier to set foot on Or. Teacher asked, "Why did my ancestors lose the war?" Smiled. It was a question she had been asked many times by many species. "Because they forgot something important," she said. "They thought the stars belonged to the strongest. They thought power came from fear, but they were wrong." What do the stars belong to? The stars belong to those brave enough to reach for them together. Looked out the window at the blue sky and the ships passing overhead. Your ancestors ruled alone. They feared everyone, and in the end, fear was not enough. But when we stand together, when we lift each other up, when we fight for something greater than ourselves, that is when we become unstoppable. Thought about this for a long time. She had been taught that her ancestors were conquerors, rulers of 1,000 worlds. But looking at the classroom around her, children of 20 different species, learning together, laughing together, she wondered if perhaps this was better. Not ruling the stars, sharing them. Outside, the sun shone on a galaxy at peace. Somewhere out there, on a small blue world called Earth, children played in parks beneath a yellow star. They did not know of war. They did not know of fear. They knew only that the stars were vast and beautiful and that they belonged to everyone. And in that vast darkness between the stars, the light of humanity's hope burned on, bright and unafraid, a beacon for all who dreamed of freedom. The stars remembered everything: the wars, the sacrifices, the heroes who had held the line. But most of all, they remembered this. When the galaxy's greatest empire threatened to destroy everything, humanity did not run. Humanity did not kneel. Humanity rose, gathered its allies, and fought back. And the stars would never forget.